So I thought I'd just start my December tour by showing you outside our back window from our living room. This is an amazing view you see when you walk into our cottage. And as you can see, there's loads of western sword ferns. And this area we keep totally wild. We own all the way to the top of the slope. And this time of year, all the maple leaves are down. So we just leave them to mulch. The only thing we do back here is we have a little fairy garden on the slope, and we have a bird feeder in that hanging house on the right. And we see tons of towies, juncos, sparrows, wrens, lots of tiny birds. So here's that window that I was showing you before, the view from our living room. It's a really neat picture window to have in your living room. Kind of feels like you're in a solarium or something. So this Thanksgiving cactus has bloomed a ton. You can see there's a few more blooms coming, but a lot of them have already fallen off. And then this one is just starting to bloom. I love the color of this one. These are Thanksgiving cactus, not Christmas cactus. You can tell by the shape of the leaves. They kind of have these little spiky bits on the top where the Christmas ones are more rounded. This is our snake plant. It has one very long, ambitious piece growing towards the skylight, which is right above them. Here's my two hydroponic growers. The one on the left, I harvest a huge basket of kale every 2 weeks. And I'm just starting a new basil plant here. This is a salad leaf basil. And then in this one, I'm starting some seeds for the spring. I've got petunia, dragon snapdragon, and I'm also trying to grow a eucalyptus tree. The reason I picked these ones was because I can pinch them back and then they'll be a little bit bushier once I put them out in the ground. So these are a bunch of seeds that I want to winter sow next month. Well, later this month. I've got a whole bunch in here. But the problem is we haven't had any freezing weather yet. So I'm just putting them in the freezer today. And after 30 days, I'll winter sow the ones that need 30 days stratification. I've got 30, 60, 90 days. So I'll just be working my way through these. And they'll be getting their cold stratification in the freezer this year instead of out on my deck. Here's what the kitties do all day. Nap, nap, nap. The kitty corner. Zena's got a heating pad under her cozy blanket because she's a bit arthritic. They're not spoiled at all, are they? Just cute. Miss Zena. This blanket here is covering my new treadmill that I got. I'm using it as a blanket stand when it's not in use. I found this identical blanket on an auction in Toronto recently, and can you believe it sold for $8,000? It's a quite rare 1965 vintage Hudson Bay blanket. It's a queen size 6-point imperial purple and magenta blanket. And I was going to sell it, but now I'm going to keep it and display it because $8,000? I made this little wreath a few years ago. It's actually one that was made and I'd kind of altered it. I think I bought it on Amazon with the little cat and the bell. And then I added berries and these darling little mushroom lights that go around it. It's super cute. All right, let's go see what's still growing in my garden on the middle of December. Here we've got dill, which I've harvested once on my petunias, but I've snipped the flowers back as they die. Not petunias, pansies. More winter pansies in here. These are our pots that we keep our hostas in, which those have died back now, but I didn't want to have bare pots. This one I grew a bunch of forget-me-nots from seed last year. and they're still blooming, which is crazy to me. This is petunia. Why hasn't it died back yet? It's the middle of December. Here's a snapdragon, but this is the one that blows my mind. My river lily is blooming again. And this is the third time in my little pond. I've got mushrooms on this piece of driftwood that we put in there. There's another one over there. There's some little orange ones down there. There's another one there. I still can't believe it's the middle of December and we have all these beautiful primroses and carnations still blooming. This is my dwarf hardy nectarine tree. We recently repotted it, cut off some of the roots so that it would fit in this pot better, and treated the peach leaf curl with copperside, and then topped it up with some fresh soil. Fingers crossed we have blooms and nectarines. And then this is another crazy. We had a snapdragon bloom and a petunia still blooming. What the heck? Crazy. I'll show you in our arboretum. First thing is the clover that we planted is doing extremely well, as are some mushrooms. This is the area we planted all those tulip bulbs. And we also sprinkled some wildflower seed, and crazily enough, they're starting to sprout. That's how warm it's been. There's not really much else to see in here. But yeah, our clover lawn's looking great. And down here, Brent weeded out the lavender bed, and we recently added some more gravel and rocks in here. The dahlias didn't do great this year, but we're just going to leave them in the ground. They're buried quite deep. See what happens. This is where I sit to bird watch, because I have a bird feeder and a bird bath there, and the birds live in that dry hedge fence pretty much year round. I was driving to work yesterday and there was these big rocks on the road, so I brought them home. We've recently weeded out around this camellia tree. It had some kind of bug on it, so Brent actually dug out the soil around it. I think it was called a potato leafhopper that was eating the leaves. It does seem to be looking better, but that's to be seen. In this bed we planted a whole bunch of muscari bulbs, and I started a whole bunch of foxglove last year, and they're in here as well as some iris and some Russian sage. And I have a juniper, blue chip juniper down here that hasn't really grown much, but I like the color and I hope that it'll cover those rocks at some point. So this bed needs a lot of work. This is probably the worst bed that we have. It has a ton of grass. We planted a bunch of deer-resistant wildflowers in it last year. Not much really came up other than California poppies. So I think we're going to clear that out. I want to put some soil in those cement blocks and plant something that likes to be dry back there because it doesn't really get access to rain. But we do have a couple of grace wort that survived. That's this plant here. And this one over here actually has a flower on it. And I think I want to put like a whole bunch in along the rock next year in the spring. It's funny, I was on a Pacific Northwest gardening group on Facebook this morning, and they were talking about how difficult it is to grow rosemary. And this is my giant, magnificent rosemary that blooms in the spring and is just the most beautiful thing. But I tried growing it in multiple places, and this is finally the spot where it liked to be. So you just got to keep looking for a nice, hot, dry, gravelly spot for it. Kind of like lavender, I guess. Here's another bed that needs some work. This grass just takes over. I would really love to get rid of it. We've tried a number of things, mushroom compost, digging it all out. We've done weed barrier. It just wants to be grass. But now we're just kind of planting things in amongst the grass, and hopefully those will take over. There's a whole bunch of foxglove in there. There's some daisies, there's some sage. Of course, the beautiful ferns and kinnick and salmonberry. You can see the last color on the salmonberry there. But everything's still so good. Into the plum garden. Here's how our clover path is doing. It's quite good in some spots, but the areas that had more of the apple leaves are going to definitely need to be replanted. Let's see. Let's start over here. We've got a couple sedums that we still need to plant. They're in pots still. And then we got some parsley, some nasturtium still in there. This was all wildflowers and tulip bulbs, alliums, and iris. So those should come back. And then we've got a few hellebores. I just know, oh, that's slippy. Just noticed one of my hellebores has flowers coming up. These ones, those leaves go to that one. I don't see any other ones yet. Now I've got another one over there and one here. Not much else happening. My mossy rock has recovered. We definitely need to do a lot of pruning of those giant water spouts on the plum trees. Try not to slip coming through here. This is where we planted a ton of hyacinth bulbs. That'll be fun to see those come up. Let's go down this one. There's a feverfew. There's a variegated periwinkle. We've got a couple Gara. It looks like it's survived. I planted those from seed. These are climbing clematis, evergreen clematis. Hopefully we'll have white flowers in the spring. There's another Gara that I planted from seed and then transplanted. I recently sprayed my roses with a copper side because they had a bit of disease on them last year. This one, you can see that, was a long stem red rose that we transplanted, and it seems to have taken okay. I've got a couple peonies that have died back. That's another peony there. The roses are pretty much dormant at this point. There's another variegated periwinkle in there. Got a massive borage. Look at those flowers on there. See that? This is a butterfly bush. I've got some yarrow plants that someone gave us. Planted a whole bunch of bulbs in here too. My rhododendron has a whole bunch of blooms setting, which is awesome because we only had one last year. Here's our wisteria. I managed to get it trained around this double post because I want the trunk of it to go up and over and then along this huge piece of driftwood and have the flowers kind of draping over. That's the dream. A bunch of ground cover in there, that's doing well. Here's the second wisteria that I've trained up. Hopefully we'll have blooms this year. I think we had one last year. In here, crazily enough, there's a lone hollyhock bud. And then there's another hollyhock that I planted last fall. This is a penstemon, which has bloomed off and on. You can see buds coming out on my hydrangea. Setting buds for the spring. Nothing happening with the clematis. Hopefully those will come back. Oh, this is wild. Look at this. We still have blooms. Little tiny pink flowers on this mini fuchsia bush. They're all over. Oh, it's muddy in here. This is all hardy geranium in here. That's so cool. Has like little mushroomy things. The moss dies back on that in the summer when it gets hot. So you never know what it's gonna look like in the winter. But I just love the moss this time of year. And that brings us back to the beginning.